So, to compete in the revolution towards electric vehicles, the software that powers the car has become as important, if not more, than the car itself. Tesla is widely praised for the software it uses to enhance the driving experience. With over-the-air updates, in addition to autonomy, Tesla uses it for energy management, infotainment, climate control, telematics, diagnostics, and so on. So for competitors to compete, they need to become as much a software company as an automaker. For Volkswagen, however, this path has been difficult, with them announcing even more delays and layoffs. We have Hans Nelson joining us. He's a mechanical engineer, has his own YouTube channel called Hans C. Nelson. And we're going to go through the announcement that Volkswagen has and dive deep a little bit more about the importance of software. Welcome, Hans.
Thanks for having me.
So let's go review the announcement that Volkswagen did. Alex Voigt is someone that we love to follow in the Tesla community. He keeps a close eye on what's happening in Europe. So he basically said that Volkswagen software group Cariad, according to reports, now they're claiming and reporting that they're going to lay off 31% of their employees. The CEO, Peter Bosch, presents a restructuring plan for Volkswagen software group, and they said that they're going to be eliminating 2,000 jobs. So 6,500 employees currently work there, so 31% of jobs will be gone. But there's more bad news from Bosch. He said that further delays in model launches are expected. This includes likely the next generation battery EVs that have already been delayed several times. And then he said that the good news is that they had too many employees, for which Tesla needs a few hundred. The cost pressure at Volkswagen is incredible, and I expect more layoffs in other parts of the company as well. Since fewer employees don't mean you have more agile, better organized software unit, my hope that Volkswagen will be better off with the new BEV generations than them. This is Alex Voigt saying that. Thoughts on Cariad and letting go of their software providers, software developers?
Yeah, one of the points that this just brings back that people inside the Tesla ecosystem, I think, understand maybe better than people who are outside of it. And that is that EVs are not one innovation, they're really two. That you need to have a modern software defined vehicle experience, and that in order to control the EV powertrain, that there's a lot that goes into that, from power electronics all the way down to user experience, UI, intelligent use of charging infrastructure, a whole number of things that the systems themselves are electronic systems and they're not mechanical systems. And so they need to be controlled by quality software in order to work properly. And so that was one of the things that Tesla got right from the beginning. And, one of the reasons that they got it right is because they're a Silicon Valley-based software company. And so they had that baked into their DNA. Obviously, Elon had founded and operated software companies. He was very capable to do this. And so they were adding the hardware piece onto a core proficiency of software. And there's been so much assumption over the years that these other companies that are hardware companies, and honestly, they're not even hardware engineering companies anymore. They are basically conglomerates that just assemble parts that are engineered and manufactured and produced by other companies. So people think that these companies like GM and Ford and Toyota and Volkswagen will just hire some group of people and they can do the software and we can operate that business in the same kind of at arm's length way that we interact with other tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 suppliers. And that'll totally work, except show me where it's worked. There are no major tech companies that have been produced outside of the Silicon Valley tech bubble of any real significance, apart from a couple of very, very niche competitor or, examples, besides companies in China that are basically following software that's been developed here in the United States. And so, you could say, hey, there's a Spotify. Hey, there's a few other things that have been started in Europe. But all of those companies are pure software companies. and they exist in a landscape where they're still secondary to software that was produced here in the United States, mostly out of Silicon Valley. And I think that Alex Karp does a really good job. He's the CEO of Palantir, of really just talking about why there's a special ecosystem that exists in the West specifically, but particularly in Silicon Valley. And now he's taking that company to Denver, that allows for this software to be developed. And a company like Volkswagen just doesn't have the cultural capacity to innovate on something like that and produce it in the first place. And it is key. They can't make compelling, affordable electric vehicles without high quality software. And so that leaves them with really two options. They could potentially acquire a or a company that has done this out of the box from square one and has gotten very good at it. I don't know where you're going to acquire that company because it doesn't exist, or you can license it from a third party. And if it's true that these large OEMs will all be able to manufacture the hardware or source the hardware, manage their supply chain to produce electric vehicles, but none of them can write the software that's necessary to actually operationalize that vehicle and make it a great product for end users, then that means the market value is going to accrue to the people who do have that ability in software. And right now, it's looking like that company is the only one who's done it fully is Tesla, and we don't really have any good examples. Ford is doing okay. Um, it's not great. And it's looking more and more like Tesla will probably end up licensing that out to these other companies, whether it's for their charging infrastructure, whether it's for the OS in the vehicle, kind of remains to be seen. We don't have any full indication one way or the other on that. But you see people relying more and more on Google and these other software native companies to manage more of their software experience. And yeah, like Volkswagen has been a dead company, like it's a zombie company for ever since what's his name, the previous CEO that I'm blanking out.
Herbert Dees.
Yes, Herbert Dees. Yeah, it's been, that we'll look back in history and say that
Yeah,
was
that was
the
a
moment
mistake.
when Volkswagen died. And they will have government support. The brand will probably persist, but the actual company and the ownership and the stakeholders will massively change.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com. So, yeah, great points. Basically, the world has changed, right? It's not just revolution of electric vehicles. You have to switch from gas to electric vehicles. You need to do autonomous, which is software, but you also need to improve the software that's running your own systems, because we're moving into that kind of a world, not just these, dumb hardware. And so at least Volkswagen tried building Cariad, but they made the mistake. They fired Herbert Diess, who made some very strong comments about what they needed to do, and they weren't ready to listen to it. You and I did a past video on Jim Farley,
Hmm.
showing him talking about their software challenges. He
And
said, I
why
think
it's so
that
hard.
he said we have 120 software vendors that we have to integrate because there's nobody else integrating it. And every time I wanted to make a change, let's say I want the car seat to move up and back faster and quicker, that will take months to ask Bosch, not the same, not the name. The name seems to be the same name as the CEO of Cariad, but
Mhm.
the vendor Bosch to actually make that change. 120, and so they're struggling. So it's almost a
Yep.
given that Tesla will, because they're willing to license this, that there will be at least one, if not many, of these OEMs, legacy auto, that's going to come. So here's what's happening with Volkswagen again. So obviously we talked about the layoffs at Cariad, but now it's impacting their software launch in Porsche and Audi models. And they said the software 1.2 platform, which was being developed for Porsche Macan and the Audi's Q6 e-tron was originally scheduled for completion in 2022. Now they pushed it to the end of 2033 for 2024, but it won't be in cars until at least 2025. So it's just so delayed. They're an absolute mess. They can't deliver multiple years, not just 6 months delay or a year. It's like multiple year delay. So Porsche said, I can't wait around for 1.2 forever. They're going to move forward with a partnership with Google, which relies on the Android automotive operating system to integrate Google services, Maps, Assistant, and other apps directly into the vehicle. What's your thought about relying on Google to be able to do this? Oh wait, I think that so the Porsche is adding Google to its cars, and they're going to use it for I just said it. So native versions of Google apps like Maps and Assistant.
I don't think this
But at
solves
least
the
it has
problem for them
over the software
because
updates. Yeah.
the Google's expertise is going to be in the user interface portion of the vehicle, which is that's great. They really need to improve that. Like those are good things to give a good user experience to the customer but it doesn't solve the core problem that you kind of referenced with our interview from Jim Farley, that when they use all these different suppliers, tier 2 down to tier 6, each one of those suppliers, they make the software that operates that component. And so every microcontroller that a Volkswagen purchases that does not have the ability, that they don't have an agreement with that person, that they actually have control over the software layer that controls that microcontroller, then you just gave up the ability to actually have full control over the end user experience of whatever that is. So whether it's a seat controller, whether it's for heating for the steering wheel or heating in the seats or air conditioning, any of the various things that are electronically controlled within the vehicle, if you buy an out of the box component from another supplier, then you have given, just the way that the automotive industry works right now, you've given the ability to control that. Like you have to interact with that thing in the way that that supplier defines. And if you need to make changes to the way that it operates in order to improve functionality, you have to work with that company to fix their own software. You can't fix the software that runs on their microcontrollers. They have to fix it. And so that's one of the reasons why, there's just a limit to how much better the software can get in these companies that's based on that dynamic.
Yeah.
And so, you
Okay.
can change the user interface. You can change the skin that's over the top of the software, but down at the level of how things actually operate, you're very limited. And they can't get either of those things right. So that's why
Yeah,
they
this
have to
is
go to
going to be
Google for the UI, and the other part they're just stuck.
And that's even just a small piece of it, like you just mentioned. Great points. Okay, so I'm going to pin the video that we just did earlier yesterday, which is the video that talked about other software, which is the autonomous, and whether or not Comma AI is a viable alternative to Tesla. Follow Hans on YouTube at Hans C. Nelson. He's also on X at Hans C. Nelson. Thank you very much, Hans. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.